everyone. Welcome to episode 3 of the Big Boys Show. We are back and better than ever, hopefully. As you can see, my backdrop's a little bit different. I added a Maryland flag because, it's not like I went to Maryland or anything. Jason's here. Craig's here. How are we all doing today?
Good. I have a different shirt on today.
Oh.
And I, as always, am sporting the plain white tee.
So basically,
it's a conspiracy theory. We don't know if Craig actually has more than one shirt. It might just be the same shirt.
Now,
it might be. I don't know. I go through 7 of these a week, so it might be the same one cycled in with the wash. But
new conspiracy theory: are you in the band the Plain White Tees?
Oh, all I'm gonna say is, hey there, Delilah. What's it like in New York City?
So that's a no. But so this week, some things happened on the sports side of stuff, and then we're going to get into our special guest interview. But some things happened on the sports side this week, kind of crazy. Really in a world where I guess in recent weeks there really hasn't been that much news regarding COVID-19 outbreaks among schools and colleges. A bunch of stuff just happened this week. Clemson players, or several, I think it was somewhere around 20 or 30.
LSU.
Yeah,
LSU.
Is well, no, there's several. They're Kansas State, Clemson, and LSU have all had some sort of an outbreak or are quarantining players. So that kind of begs the question now as this continues to happen. Obviously, COVID's not dying down anytime soon. So has your guys' opinions on whether this season's going to happen or not changed?
So I think that despite this, I think that they're almost looking towards the model of like these schools. They won't say this, but I think that they're almost hoping that their team gets it enough to where there's like a herd immunity, so that like sure if one person hasn't had it, they're still susceptible to it. But I think that like they're quarantining these players and they're still kind of keeping them together as teams, going through their workouts and whatnot. So obviously if somebody's a positive case, they're going to take them out. But if they're a confirmed positive case, they've already probably had contact with other players and spread that. And like it's getting a little conspiracy theory-ish, but I wouldn't be surprised if somewhere in their thought process they said, well, if all the players get it and then are immune to it, then they can't get it again, which would then bring up the thing of, well, if all players get it, then all of a sudden the league is just immune to it and brings that herd immunity. But also that brings a lot of other risks where they're actually bringing into question the health and safety of these players' lives. Because it's a new disease that we still don't know much about. And so I think that it's definitely going to be put into question stronger than it was before on whether we're actually going to be coming back. But those are my thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really again, we've never gone through this type of thing before, so I can't really say whether or not, at this point, I'm just trying to stay positive that we'll have some sort of marching band in the fall. Honestly, even without football, I really hope that something can come from it. But it's looking more and more dire. I mean, it's just hard to just contain a group that's that big and make sure they don't come into close contact with each other. Even our locker rooms here are there's halls that are very tight, and I just either we take an hour for all of us to put our instruments away after practice, or we just deal with it. So it's kind of I don't know. Personally, I'm it's starting to look, I guess, more dire. I did notice that one thing though, that knock on wood, these things have been mainly in the South. And I haven't heard of much of the Big Ten with having problems with this. I don't know if I just haven't read it, but I'm reading LSU, I guess Clemson I haven't seen yet, but then Kansas State. So hopefully we stay in the clear and maybe we can get some sort of all Big Ten season maybe or with Notre Dame, maybe not.
I don't know, there
That'd
might
be nice
something.
to try and at least try and keep the conference contained. But actually, that brings up another point about something that Ohio State's done in the past I think the past week or so, which some of you may have heard of, the Buckeye Pledge, which was a waiver that all players, and I think the parents of the players too, were told to sign, which basically, I mean, it's a waiver saying that if you want to play football at Ohio State this season, you're going to be at risk of contracting COVID-19, and so it's just a regular liability waiver. But one interesting thing about it was that athletic director Gene Smith said that it was intended for an educational purpose, not to be a legally binding document, which just it's a strange statement, and him saying that puts a lot of questions in the minds of people. So, like, let's say a player does contract it, and I haven't read the specifics of the waiver, but I could only imagine it'd be something along the lines of you can't sue the university if you choose to play football and because of that contract COVID-19. But then him coming out and making the statement that this is a pledge, not a legally binding document, says, well, if it's not a legally binding document, then can they still like sue the school if they get in trouble, or not if they get in trouble, if they have any health ramifications from the disease. So I think the having that statement from A.D. Smith definitely kind of confuses the issue, and then all of a sudden, if you have a waiver that's not a legal document, what is that? Like, what does that even mean?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, not to cut you off, Craig. But the way that this entire situation has reminded me, and I know that, so far we've only seen cases pop up in the South, but and I'll try to keep it short, but for those who have been following what's been going on with Major League Baseball, their season hasn't happened yet, and one of the big things that the owner's side of it that they've been saying is like the one red flag is COVID. And just recently, a few camps down in Florida shut down because a few players and personnel contracted it. And there's been a back and forth between how many games are going to be played and the revenues and money and all of that stuff. Obviously, that's not really applicable to college since players only, get paid through scholarships. They don't actually get paid outside of that for the most part. But and then on top of that, I think the thing, what you were talking about with this waiver, very much reminds me of basically after the season, the players, Major League Baseball players, can basically file a grievance if they felt that things weren't being negotiated in good faith, essentially to try to get in as many games as possible with the remaining days that are available before the end of what the actual season would be. So this is kind of the same thing where Major League Baseball doesn't want that to happen. So they want to try to alleviate the risk of having them file the grievance, much in the same way that Ohio State is having the players sign this pledge to alleviate the risk of having them contract something and come down with something and then sue the school and get angry at the school because they were put at risk due to this. So it's kind of, in a way, something like that.
Yeah.
You can find it on Twitter, actually, if you look at it. Some guy posted it. And it's like, it's basically like all the stuff that you guys are talking about. It's like, yeah, we're going to do everything we can, but there's always going to be that risk of getting it, even if you take every precaution possible right now.
Yeah.
And it says you pledge that if you test positive, you're going to be in self-quarantine in a designated location until the symptoms have been resolved, and it has been 10 days since the start of my symptoms, and I have a negative COVID-19 test result. And they say that they're monitoring for the following symptoms, and if they develop it, they have a detailed thing of what to do. And then I guess that's pretty much it. It says wear a mask or the appropriate PPE in all public spaces. I don't know if that's just if they get the virus or like just what Ohio State's planning to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it looks
kind
like
of just standard
kinda,
stuff.
Yeah.
From what it seems like, but just having the players sign it. And Craig told me that all of the players in the football team have signed it, and I don't know if that's like a collusion from the coaching staff saying that.
It says it's this guy also says that all the student athletes signed it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see
that,
what happens from there.
That could also mean that if somebody didn't sign it, they're off the roster. Like
That's true.
They're basically holding and saying, like, we don't want to be held liable for this, so if you do not choose to sign this, you're not playing a sport for us. And therefore, like, it doesn't matter if you were a star player on any team. If you don't sign this paper, you're not a football player. You're not a soccer player. You're not a hockey player. I don't know. But, yeah, so I think that's
we'll see what happens with that.
And
we'll see what
that's
happens.
a nice little summary of what's going on that front in the Big Ten. There's also another piece of news from the Big Ten. This past week, Commissioner Kevin Warren, he announced the what are the words I'm looking for? He announced the members of his Big Ten Anti-Hate and Anti-Racism Coalition, including student athletes, coaches, athletic directors, chancellors, presidents, and other members of the Big Ten other members of the Big Ten family representing all 14 member institutions. This article's words that I had printed out from the Big Ten Network website. Along with that, the conference is also launching a voter registration initiative, which is designed to inform the players or the student athletes about civic engagement and the importance of it, along with how to register to vote, and actually voting, whether it's in person or absentee. And so every month starting July through the November election, they're going to be having monthly programming designed to help players kind of learn how to use their voice and their platform that they've been so lucky to be given to help enact change that is important to them. And so a lot of the players on this that were selected for this coalition actually have been already using their platform. I know one prolific name that stands out in my mind is Geo Baker from the Rutgers men's basketball team. He's always been very outspoken on Twitter about things that he feels are wrong. A lot of which is about different racial tensions and different incidents that have occurred in either the local New Jersey, New York community, just the Rutgers community alone, or things in the grander scale of the United States or even the globe entirely. He's been very outspoken on social media about that, and so have a lot of the other players that have been selected for this coalition. And so there's still a lot of information out there not out there yet on what exactly the coalition is going to be doing, like kind of more specifics, or whether they're just going to be another body that just condemns racism and actions taken against police departments that don't follow typically accepted things that you should do, course of action, or if they're actually going to be kind of enacting more things to make social change. That's still out there. I haven't been able to find too much information about about the actual purpose of it, other than just that they felt that there needs to be this coalition to raise the voice for the players and the coaches and the community.
I think that's what that's the general idea is, using the platform that these student athletes have is, because they're very, for lack of a better term, popular people. And when they can use their platforms to bring out, the words, it encourages more people around to also follow that. And I think that's good to have.
Yeah, I think it's great that they're doing this. I know on Maryland's side of things, the one guy that really comes to my mind is Maxwell Costas from the baseball team. He's been really outspoken about the the matters, the pressing matters of this country in recent weeks. And he's said a lot of things about it, posted a lot of stuff on social media, and I think that he's a great person to have on something like this. I'm glad that they're pushing for this. I wish that they would have pushed for this earlier. It sucks that it takes a movement like this in a time like this with everything that's going on. It sucks that it has to take that in order for someone to speak up and say we should be doing something like this. But I'm glad that something's being done for it. I'm glad that initiatives like this are being pushed in order to continue to inform student athletes and to continue to push that narrative forward.
And I see here that he was selected to be another member of this coalition. I keep blanking on that word. So it's another showing of somebody who knew how to use his platform, was selected for this to kind of help lead the charge and show other student athletes and other members of the Big Ten community, hey, this is how we're going to do this. This is how we're going to move forward and push for the social change that, frankly, should have been here long before any of these players were ever born.
Yeah, and I hope that other conferences do it too, because I'm sure that people know about what happened with Oklahoma State running back Chuba Hubbard, and Oklahoma State's football coach is blanking in my head right now. But the situation with that, I'm not really going to go into it. You can look it up. It was well reported online by a lot of good sports outlets, so ESPN, SB Nation, Bleacher Report, stuff like that. But I mean, that's a big thing. I hope that other conferences will kind of look at what the Big Ten's doing and go off of that. And I think that there is a lot of possibility for that moving forward, especially with, like I said, with everything that's going on. I'm sure there's going to be an added need for people to continue to have their voices be heard, and for this stuff, this narrative and this stuff to continue to be pushed forward, and for change to be enacted. Because, like I said, it's been way too long for stuff to actually have happened, and for stuff to continue to happen. And I wish that it was done a lot sooner, but I'm glad that, someone's actually saying we should do something and is actually trying to take some sort of a stance about this.
Yeah. I couldn't agree more. I think it's a great thing that Commissioner Warren is pushing for, and I only wish that we could have come up with this sooner, so to maybe prevent so many more deaths due to issues of police brutality and misuses of power and abuses of power. And I think that was one thing that Commissioner Warren had actually talked about in an interview on BTN, why he wanted to do this, because all these people, sheriffs, local politicians, they're all elected officials, and a lot of young people choose to. It's historically throughout the past, probably the past century or so, young people are usually the least likely to go out and vote. That's been changing in recent years, I think, a little bit, but a lot of them have the mentality of, like, I'm just one person, one voice doesn't really make a difference. But in these smaller local elections, one voice does make a difference, and it really can come down to it. So that's why he was really pushing for this, for the voter registration initiative, kind of led by these student athletes that know how to use their positions and their platforms to kind of encourage people to get out there and use their own voices and stand up for what they believe in.
Yeah, definitely. But Jason, do you have anything else before we move on?
I think you guys got everything.
All right, perfect. All right, so now that we're done with sports, let's get on to the main segment of our third episode, our interview with someone that I know personally. I know that you guys will come to find out, and the listeners will come to really enjoy. Okay, so we are back with our main segment. Our interview this week is with someone that I know really well, former 2-year drum major at the University of Maryland and the Mighty Sound of Maryland. Just graduated last winter, you said? Just wanted to make sure of that. Brian Starace. Brian, how are you?
Hey, everybody. I'm good.
So I guess we can just get into it to start. So the first question that I have for you is, how did you get involved with band? How did all of that start off? Was it high school that you first got interested? Was it college? How did all of that kind of manifest itself?
Yeah, for me, it all started in high school. I heard that some of my friends were joining the marching band when I was going up from middle school, and like the rest is history, to be honest. Got real involved my freshman year, and just every year after that, I really found a home in my high school marching band. And by the time I went to college, I felt like that was something I really wanted to do. When I learned a little bit about Maryland and the band that they had there, it was just something I had to be a part of. And I knew, for me, coming from high school where all my friends were in the band, I knew that social support network was something that I could really that I really wanted to be a part of going to college.
Now, as someone who is also from New Jersey, like me and Craig, your high school marching band, was it a competitive band? Was it more of a like a
Show band.
Yeah, a show band, or like I guess that part of it, did that kind of play a role in what you wanted to do after high school?
Yeah, definitely. So it was a competitive band. We did competitions almost every weekend, performing our one show at football games and the rest. My band director was actually a former cadet, and she really got me hooked on marching band, hooked on drum corps, and I think influenced me a lot in wanting to pursue music education and continue doing marching band, both college marching band and drum corps in the future.
So with that, how did Maryland kind of come into focus for you as a school that you eventually attended?
Yeah, so for me, it happened really last minute, actually. I wasn't sure where I wanted to go. I was weighing the pros and cons of a few different options. I actually committed to a different school, and I was going to go there. And on the last day, I rescinded my decision and accepted at Maryland and decided to go on that last day of the deadline. So for me, I spent a long time weighing the pros and cons of the music education program and why I wanted to be a part of that and what that program could offer me. But then also looking at the extracurriculars, I was looking at some other schools as well that didn't have a marching band, and I thought, it'll be fine. I'll do drum corps in the summer, and I won't worry about having marching band at school. And honestly, I think it was one of the best decisions of my life to choose a school with such a strong program and such a great program for having collegiate band, because all the friends I made, all the relationships I built, all the connections I made, I'm just so grateful because of that experience in college band.
I'm sure Craig would love to hear this, but did Rutgers ever crack your list of schools that you were considering attending, or were you like, did you want to get the heck out of New Jersey?
I wanted to get the heck out of New Jersey.
There we go. That's the right answer.
Yeah, I was looking at Rutgers, but pretty early on, I crossed it off my list.
No, put that one off the list real quick.
Yeah, no hard feelings or anything. I mean, I know a lot of people who went there. It's a great school, but for me, I wanted something new.
Yeah, you know what? Everyone has the things that they're looking for. You know what? If you don't want the craziness of New Brunswick, maybe the choice to stay out of New Jersey is a good choice.
And I guess we can talk about college marching band a little bit later. But so you marched cadets for 3 years, and you said that your band director in high school was a former cadet. Did she, or I mean, was it a she or a he? Or
She.
She. So what did she kind of talk to you about with all of that, and how the experience was? And was that something that you were immediately like, I want to do this, or did it kind of take a little bit for you to say, this is something that I'm interested in?
It definitely took me a little bit of time. I think it was something that was always in the back of my head because I'm a woodwind player. I play saxophone. That's my main instrument. And for a long time, it was like, this is something I want to be a part of. Not really sure if I can learn a brass instrument, if this is something I can get my foot in the door with. And my band director, she was also a saxophone player, learned baritone to march cadets. And I think for me, that was something, okay, like I saw that she did that and made me feel like, okay, that's something I could do too. And I never really got around to it until I got to college. But yeah, she definitely was a big influence in me wanting to pursue that.
And how tough was that transition from a woodwind instrument to a brass instrument, especially at the caliber
Different register too.
Yeah, yeah, especially at the caliber that cadets
Should have
is.
played mellow.
Yeah. Well, I thought about playing mellow, actually. I was weighing the pros and cons of all the different instruments I could have learned. And I talked to my saxophone teacher and I asked him, I was like, if I'm learning a brass instrument, what do you think I should learn? And his first response, he was like, learn tuba. That'll mess with your embouchure the least. So
Oh yeah, that's true. That's true.
And I was like, I'm not carrying a contra around all summer. So I can't do that. So I settled on baritone. But yeah, oh my gosh, it was rough. My first season, I actually did Raiders in New Jersey, Raiders Drum and Bugle Corps. And that was like my intro into drum corps. And that was trial by fire. I showed up to that first camp. I had never played brass like in my life. And, they just, taught me everything they could and threw me into it. It was like truly trial by fire.
I didn't know there was actually like any drum corps where you can go without having like never played a brass instrument.
I actually
That's pretty cool.
Actually know another former saxophone player who started baritone at Raiders and switched to and then eventually moved up to cadets. Sure, you might know who I'm talking about. Sebastian.
Yeah, Sebastian Machado.
Yeah. He and we went to high school together. He marched 1 year with the Rutgers band, but he was going to a different campus. Like he was going to the Newark campus, so he had to commute. Like I think it's like 45 minutes each way for rehearsal all the time. And then for game days, it was too much for him to continue with the Rutgers band. But he and I went to the same high school, and I remember watching him make the transition from saxophone player to like baritone and euphonium player, and I was like, all right, see you're choosing the right side, side of
sure.
the of the band.
Yeah. That's where all the power is,
Yeah.
All that sound.
So one of the weird things that I always hear about the cadets, I'm sure you're ready for it, is that you guys step off with the right foot. This is for like all the people in marching band who have always stepped off with their left foot and think it's weird. So like, what's the whole thing about that?
Yeah, so there's definitely some lore behind that, some conflicting stories that I've heard about why we do that. And it was actually originally like people think it was it was the staff's way of getting back at the membership. They're doing so poorly, we're gonna make you all step off with the right foot. But no, I'm pretty certain that it was actually a design choice. The way the drill was written, it was much easier to do right foot step offs because of certain direction changes that were happening in the drill. This was so many years back. I don't even know exactly the date. And ever since then, it just kind of stuck. It was their way to, be different, do something unique. And I think one of the values that kind of develops like past that even is that it almost doesn't matter what you're doing as long as you're doing it the same. There's so many bands out there who do such different things, especially even in the Big Ten. There's the high stepping bands, there's the core style bands, there's, bands with so many different.
And even between all those, there's so many variations of the high steps and the different roll steps.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that, as long as you're doing it the same and you're doing it with pride and you're doing it with excellence, then, it doesn't really matter.
This leads me to one question. Have you ever gotten like mixed up, kind of forgotten where you were either in Maryland, stepped off with the right foot, or with the cadets stepped off with the left foot, just like not really thinking, just force of habit? Has that ever happened?
Oh yeah, Oh yeah, so much. There was after my second year with cadets, being back with the Mighty Sound, and I was up in front of the band teaching doing some marching technique stuff, like teaching the basics blocks at the beginning of the season, and I would be like demonstrating all the exercises, stepping off with my right foot, and then like one of my co-drum managers would be like, "Brian, stop stepping off with the right foot. You're confusing the band."
The easy fix for
I
that,
never
just
noticed
say,
it.
Just mirror me.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. I'll just mirror me. Yeah.
I never noticed it, so you're good with me. I don't know anything else, but so I guess off of that, can you kind of just describe how how cadets was, how that experience was, how a drum corps, a DCI band, especially one of that of that stature and with the lore behind it and with the awards behind it, like how was it over the 3 years that you were there?
Yeah, it was a lot. The 3 years I was there, which was 2019, 2018, 2017. There was a lot going on with that organization in a lot of different ways. It was my first year was the year that they took a huge direction change in terms of their uniform. They're like very traditional, iconic uniform. They started moving away from that my first year. My second year, the organization had huge administrative changes and membership changes, even going from 2016 to 2017. So there were definitely a lot of challenges there. From a personal perspective, for me, being there in 2017, it was like a dream come true. It was this thing that I really wanted to be a part of, that, this goal that I had, and getting to be a part of that and being there and achieving that was something really special for me. But then also just the 3 years I was there, seeing the other leaders, like my drum majors at cadets, I learned so much from them in things where I saw them deal with situations and handle these really hard situations and say, wow, like that's something I want to bring back to my band. That's the kind of leader I want to be. And so I grew a lot in that respect too. And then just also every single one of those years was so different from the previous. So just being able to deal with changes quickly, taking things in stride, I think that's something that I learned a lot from those 3 years with cadets.
Why do you or if you know, but like why did they decide to like go away with the traditional uniforms?
Yeah, I think it was mostly to keep up with the times. Just so many other corps were really pushing the envelope in terms of what they were wearing on the field and incorporating what musicians wore as part of the costuming and the theme for the shows. So I think that's why they made that push. And there's always people who are gonna rile and rave about how they don't like the changes. That happens every year, no matter what the corps is doing. So.
And then I have a question for, I guess, the whole group. How do you guys feel about because I know there's been, I guess, I wouldn't say controversy, but like pushback on it gets really hot during marching band season, right? And the uniforms that we wear, like the very traditional ones, are quite heavy sometimes. And I know for a fact, at least in the Purdue band, that a lot of our members were unable to march pregame or halftime because like they overheated marching to the stadium, and we had to march a hole because we couldn't find someone to fill it with no like training in that position. So how do you guys feel about, like, I know, at least from our perspective, that even taking off our uniforms, like our jackets in the stands, like I think they did it once when it was like 104 degrees and people were passing out. And like, from what I hear from the older students, that the alumni were just not happy with it. Like, they did not like the fact that they were because we're a band that always keeps our uniform on and our hats. Like, we don't wear baseball caps or anything. So like, I want to hear what you guys think about the whole, like, I guess pushing the envelope, as you would say, but basically like changing up the uniform to make it, I guess, more comfortable for the times.
Yeah. Yeah, I kind of have like mixed feelings about that, because there's like a part of me that's like no, like the uniform is this sacred thing, like we need to keep it, it's tradition, it's so important. And then there's another part of me that's like, it just makes no sense sometimes. And And I definitely agree with that. Like in the context of college band as well, like when you have people who can't participate, or people who are, at serious health risk because it gets really hot in the stands and you're standing up for so long, and who knows, the games will go on for 3-4 hours,
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that making decisions for the betterment of an organization, for the betterment of the membership, I think are always the right decisions to make. Yeah, I mean, in thinking about what we did at Maryland a few times, just kind of making calls of like, all right, everybody, jackets off. Okay, everybody, jackets on.
Oh, it was so nice when jackets were off. Oh my God.
And just kind of, going with the flow with that kind of stuff. And it's an exceptionally hot game, and we just decided for one game, we're not, no jackets, no Shakos for this halftime. And, it was the right call to make. It's not like, we're throwing away the uniforms, but
yeah,
it's,
it's a lot.
The right thing to do by the membership, I think.
And
I forget what game that was.
I understand when, like, why people have their pushback against it. But at the same time, like, you have to understand that, like, the people that are down there wearing those uniforms, first of all, those uniforms, for people that don't know, are very thick. And I think they're like wool, usually, like some wool, and like thick, heavy jackets. Like, you can be sweating in like 50-degree weather just wearing that thing. But then on top of that, you're down on the turf, if your school has turf, which is usually an extra like 15 degrees. I don't know, it at least feels like. And you're going for like 10 minutes straight, constantly moving with very, very limited ability to breathe. Like, even athletes can breathe when they want to breathe. Not saying that like band is harder than being like a football player or anything, but like they can breathe when they want. We can breathe specifically when we're told to breathe. And so it definitely makes it hard to say, well, like, no, they need to wear that uniform because it looks better, and that's like the tradition. Because they're students, you have to look out for the health and well-being of your students as a university. Like, that's your number one priority should be make sure the students survive, and then number two, make sure they get everything else done that they need to do. But like,
that's a really grim first point. Jeez.
I mean,
Make sure
like,
they survive.
No deaths.
Rutgers is a hardcore marching band. We forgot.
Hardcore. Oh, that's true. Rutgers is a hardcore.
We go hard. But yeah. Oh, just.
Well, I was gonna say, at least for me, I mean, it's better. It depends on the season. So like, like in November when it's like cold as hell, I love wearing them because like it's like a layer of stuff so that I don't have to be cold. But in August, when like we're in a stadium, for those who don't know, Capital One Field at Maryland Stadium, because we have to always acknowledge the sponsor because they paid money to have their name there. But so Capital One Field at Maryland Stadium, there is like where we stand, there is no shade. So like the sun is beating down on us like constantly, and then the I guess the tower, or it's called Tizer Tower, but there's like suites there, and there's all like the press and TV broadcasting, radio broadcasts are up there. That's glass radiating from the sun on us basically. So like that's even more
mirrors.
Yeah. So it gets really hot in the summer, or I mean in like August and September. So it's nice to not have to like wear it. So like I'm kind of like the uniforms as is are fine, but like it's just nice to be able to like take them off during the warmer months and then keep it on during the colder months, because the temperature does eventually decrease as the season goes on. So that's nice.
There's nothing like a nice thick cloud during a game day, and you're just
and you get that breeze. You get that breeze that like blows across the stadium.
Oh, and you're just like,
oh yes,
it's a good time.
One thing that I have noticed though,
go ahead.
One thing that I have noticed is that some schools, especially more recently, have been starting to like add components to the uniform. Other than just the jacket and like the pants, whether it's bib pants or whatever. I don't know how other schools' uniforms are, but they've started adding different like shirts underneath and shorts and whatnot. So I know at Rutgers, one thing that I think we only did this once, but so our game day uniform, like underneath what we wear, is we have a pair of Adidas shorts that were given to us along with a Rutgers band shirt. And then at one point, it got to the point where it was just way too hot in the stands. I think multiple people had already like passed out and had to go to like the medical tent. And they ended up just saying, all right, take off your jackets, take off your bib pants. We're going like t-shirt and shorts. We're marching halftime t-shirt and shorts.
Oh,
and like
that
baseball
was
caps.
very nice.
And I didn't really like it just because I felt like naked on the field almost.
Yeah.
And like they weren't long shorts, like they're soccer shorts. So like if you guys can picture what soccer shorts are, they're kind of short. You know what? Like didn't love the feeling of having
showing
like, the
off the
breeze on my
calves.
thighs. but like I think we got a little bit of pushback that week on like this is completely inappropriate. The band shouldn't be marching around in shorts and t-shirts. But also that was like the first game of the season, and so it was like the very beginning of September, hot as hell, and like band members were literally passing out and like couldn't march because it was just too hot. So I think I've seen that starting to kind of spread throughout the college band scene for these early season games where the temperature varies. And then I think and then I know I think we were discussing this last week, or maybe we were just discussing it off the podcast. I think Minnesota actually has multiple uniforms, and a few other schools actually have multiple uniforms. So like a warmer weather uniform, a colder weather uniform, to also kind of get that same thing. So they still look professional, but at the same time, they're not facing the same health risks of like, oh, they're going to pass out on the field.
Yeah, and in terms of just like also like the technologies that exist in like, you know, different uniform manufacturers and designers, like you can do that. You can make your uniforms out of something that's not, you know, this super heavy wool. Well, I agree. It's super nice when it's cold out, but yeah, it's like you can have something that's breathable, or you can have something that's lighter, or, you know, something that, you know, makes a little more sense for what you're doing or where you might be in the country.
Yeah.
I will say though, we have two uniforms. I think other schools, I know Minnesota does. Obviously, I know that we do. I know each of the Michigan schools have at least two uniforms each. But the funny thing is, like the one that you're supposed to wear for the hot is always too hot. But then the one that you're supposed to wear in the winter is always never enough. It's never like right in the middle. But yeah. That's like, I know for a fact that a lot of the school, at least 3 of the schools in the Big Ten, have like the double uniforms.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, so I think I had one more question about cadets. But because I know that you guys kind of go around the country and perform at a bunch of different places, what was your favorite place to perform at?
Oh gosh. So for me, it was Allentown, Pennsylvania, which, you know, it's like the hometown for cadets. And I think one of the reasons why I had a really good memory there in 2018 when we performed there for the home crowd, you know, performing for the home crowd is just, you know, it makes it that much better. And that stadium in particular has so much history. That was the stadium where I saw one of my first drum corps shows. So I have memories of that. And the history of that stadium. And one of the things that we would always be told by the staff and people say is that J. Bernie Crum Stadium, she don't lie. She, you know, any imperfection, any inconsistency, like those judges will see it. That box is high up there. The sound bounces around. You can hear everything really clearly from the stands. So it's, you know, it's a great stadium to perform in. And it was just performing for that home crowd, performing in a stadium with so much drum corps history was pretty awesome.
That's insane. That's really cool. I know a bunch of my friends have really been interested in it. I know that there's at least, you know, where I am, the closest show I think was Chester. So I don't know if you guys ever performed at I guess what was it PPL or Town Energy when you guys went? Or did
I
it
performed there when it was both, I think.
Oh, okay, yeah.
But
so
oh my
that's-
God, that stadium is crazy because it's that soccer field.
Yeah,
and it's
yeah,
grass.
yeah.
It's not
it's the
turf.
home of the Union.
Yeah, it's slippery as heck. Like that thing, people falling left and right. And that overhang that they have on the stands there,
Yeah.
the sound just like collects. So it's just like everything's so loud when you in that stadium.
Yeah.
The other stadium that was a ton of fun to perform in, it was just like a really cool experience. Oh gosh, now I'm like thinking, because every now and then we'll have a pro stadium that we get to perform in, which is pretty cool. Getting to use the locker rooms in MetLife was fun. With like good showers, which was nice. And then also we got to perform in the new stadium in Atlanta, the new Falcons Stadium.
Wait, actually?
Right when it opened.
No.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
It was super cool. Like the indoor shows are great
I
because it's not hot. But
for those who don't know, Mercedes-Benz Stadium, which is what Brian's talking about, is the home of the Falcons and the home of Atlanta United. Just look it up. It is the most insanely constructed stadium I've ever seen. I got to go there. Like I didn't see a field, but I got to like look at it and like go inside for like 15 minutes last July or last June. It is the craziest thing in the world. Like, it's so insane.
It is insane.
It's so cool.
It's huge, and the architecture is really cool.
It's
so
cool.
really echoey in there. But the other thing, too, about pro stadiums is the turf is so squishy. Like, it's so bouncy.
I didn't know
compared to any other kind of turf. Like, the pro turf is always just super squishy.
An interesting difference. I mean, I wouldn't have thought that there'd be a difference, but if you're going around all summer and you're feeling all these different playing surfaces, and you're like, and you start to notice the differences. I mean, in high school, like we went to MetLife once a year for the U.S. Benz Yamaha Cup, but other than that, like it was always like the cheapest turf fields you could find for high schools, or like falling apart, like just covered in ditches, grass fields, which you can barely even call it a field at that point. It's just like it's like just a torn up little patch of dirt. But then so that I guess that experience marching all summer on all different surfaces all around the country, you really start to get a feel for, all right, like there are differences between turfs, and it's an interesting. What would you say your favorite turf to march on was? If you have a favorite one. That's kind of a weird question.
Very specific question. I really want to hear about the turf.
It just
for all you
popped in
turf
my mind.
enthusiasts out there.
You know what? There are
like,
that one guy that watches is like, yes!
Finally!
You'd be surprised though, like stadiums get reputations and people know, like, oh, that's a good field, like, oh, that field sucks.
Going
like
here today. Oh.
don't want to perform there. But oh gosh. Well, there was one stadium which I really wanted to march on, and then the show got rained out, so we couldn't. But Denver, in Denver, Colorado, Mile High Stadium, it was a grass field, but the grass was so perfectly flat and like so clean cut. We did a standstill performance, but we got to march out. We marched out and set up our arc, and then did a standstill. And as I was marching out on that grass, I was like, man, this would have been a good show. Like, this is
some nice grass.
Yeah, it's the nicest grass I've ever seen.
That's pretty
Actually,
cool.
Ross State is a grass field. Fun fact. I think it's run by the Purdue Ag Department, so that's why
Shout out Purdue Ag Department.
Thanks for the field, guys.
I did want to say before we go into Maryland stuff, Brian was the only person who seemed to be on board with my one show proposal, which was the show. And we talked about this last week, but the Cadets 2000 show. And Brian was like, yo, that show is sick. Let's do it. And then it never happened.
Yeah, that's my favorite Cadets show, Cadets 2000.
I think that's probably everybody's
such a
favorite
good
show.
I think the only cadet show that I remember distinctly is there's one where I don't know if it's the one we're going to talk about, but there's one where they have like a drum break, except it's all a cappella.
Oh yeah.
It shook me so much. When I was first watching it, I was like having I was like, what is going on?
That was
Alex, you have to
2005. The
Dude, all of a
zone.
sudden, out of nowhere, this one dude's just like scatting on a microphone. He's just going ham, and eventually people just start joining in. It's just awesome.
That's pretty dope.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
one's cool. Yeah, but the fun fact about the 2000 cadet show, that championship was in Maryland Stadium when it was a grass field.
Wait, actually?
Yeah, DCI Finals
Oh.
was in Maryland Stadium that year.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's like this weird
Good times.
yeah. There's actually in the back room, in our storage room, there's like all these racks of like old video cassettes and old recordings of the band that go like way back when.
Yeah.
And there's 2 video cassettes of DCI Finals from the year 2000 from when it was
That's sick.
at Maryland Stadium.
Dang it, I never looked at that. I also never asked you about it, but that's another thing. So so now talking about Maryland, so obviously you did MSOM for 4 years. I guess can you kind of for those who don't know, because we've talked about a few bands now, can you kind of describe what MSOM is, kind of like the process in order to get in, all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so well, the process has definitely changed since I joined. There's been a lot of new things going on with Maryland's band, a lot of improvements that have been happening. So at least for my experience when I was joining, it was really as simple as getting on the email list and getting in touch with the section leader and registering for the class, making sure I was registered for the class. And once you're registered for the class, you know, everything just kind of, they tell you when to show up, and you show up, and, you know, the rest is history.
Yeah, it is considerably simple. I know that Craig at Rutgers is kind of similar to what we do, but Jason, there's an audition process at Purdue and all of that, and I can just like in the back of my mind, I'm like, God, I'm so happy that there wasn't one at Maryland, because like I wouldn't have passed it, no way, just wouldn't have happened. But
yeah, we had a good talk with Maddie about the audition process for our bands, and I think I don't know about the other bands, but I know just for Brian that our band has a week-long audition process, and it's mostly there's a very small component of music, but it's mostly marching, because we have a very distinct style of our low chair, which is our high step, and basically the whole like week is like trying to see how well you learn and like how much you can adapt and how well you can, you know, fix your mistakes and keep them fixed throughout the week, and that eventually determines your membership. But I do know that Rutgers, they may not have like a hardcore audition, but we went through this. They're a hardcore band, and Craig can tell you why.
I don't even think we're that hardcore. I mean, we just
no,
They train
that's
in the
hardcore.
mountains.
we go up to the woods for band camp.
Oh yeah.
We march in the middle of the woods. Yeah, sure. Sometimes there's a bear or something.
If you survive that, you're in the band.
Yo, Bear Watch 2020 is a real thing. So Brian, with Maryland, I kind of wanted to get into stuff about early week in a second, but was I guess with alto saxophone, since you were also going to eventually transition into doing DCI and things of that sort, I guess in college, was alto saxophone going to be the instrument that you were going to focus on the most, or were you considering going to brass at Maryland?
Yeah, that's something I didn't consider, switching my instrument at Maryland. Being in the saxophone studio and you know, being a saxophone performance major is being something that I auditioned for to go to Maryland. You know, that was something that wasn't going to change.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, learning that brass instrument was almost like something auxiliary that I was doing. It almost felt like an extracurricular type thing, you know?
Mm-hmm.
So it was
Okay.
definitely in addition.
What's like the application process for like a music major to a college? Because we don't have any, Purdue doesn't have a music school, so we don't have any music majors.
Oh,
so
okay.
So if I was like a high school senior and I wanted to major in music, say like I wanted to be a performance major, like how would I go about that process?
Yeah, so it is different for every school. Most schools, I know, like if it's like a major university or a public university, like our schools, it's you would apply normally as you normally would, and once you're accepted there, then after you're accepted, or maybe while you're still, they're still processing your application, you would show up for an in-person audition. And some schools, they require you to do pre-screening, which means you record videos of yourself playing certain excerpts, you send it to the professors, and they'll invite you for an audition. Or some schools, you just sign up and you show up and you'll audition and they'll let you know. And then there was a conservatory that I applied to. I didn't end up getting in, but they really didn't care about your academics at all. They just wanted you to send a video of you playing, and if they liked it, they'd invite you for an audition, and that was it. But yeah, so it's like normally applying to college, and then you just tack on this, I have to show up and audition in person.
Yeah. I remember when I was I think my sophomore year in the band, I actually had transferred out of our School of Arts and Sciences into Mason Gross, the School of the Arts at Rutgers. And I was dead set. I was going to be a music education major. After that year, I realized that was a mistake and that I should be a computer science student. So I ended up transferring back. But for that 1 year that I was in there, I remember there was a grad student there who'd come from Juilliard, and he heard me say C's get degrees, and he was like, no, it's not C's get degrees, it's D's get diplomas. And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, no, like anything outside of like your music classes, just pass. You don't need to worry about your grades there, just pass. And like I was at the time like planning on doing a physics minor along with my music major.
Oh wow.
Just because like I had class, I had AP credits and whatnot.
Why?
Don't ask about my academic path. It's a long, confusing.
Oh, now we gotta roast you about it later. This is.
I did finish the physics minor and I did finish the music minor along with my computer science degree.
Whoa.
But it took me 5 years for all that. So, but
Pretty impressive.
But so we're there, and I was taking Principles of Astrophysics as a music major, and it was not an easy class. I mean, it wasn't like the hardest physics class in the world, but like I was getting like a C in it, and I got and so going into the second semester of sophomore year, I got called into the academic advisor's office for the school, and she was like Craig, I see you got a C in one of your liberal arts classes. Like we can't be having you like getting bad grades in your liberal arts class. You have to make sure that you save your bad grades for your tough major classes. And at that point, when she called Principles of Astrophysics a liberal arts class, that was kind of the moment I knew I was like, I'm not in the right program. But I was like, okay, I'll try and do better. But at that point, I was like, all right, we're done with this, and
I would feel so
packing our
intimidated
bags
if there was like a music major in one of if there's a music major in one of my major classes. Because like if I was like in a heavy like circuit design class and someone was like, what are you like a compy? And he's like, actually I'm a music major. I'm just doing this class, but I thought I should minor in this. And I would just be like,
I did have a few experiences like that. There was one guy who was like, did you just say music major? Like, or did you say like
fun?
Did I mishear you saying physics, or did you actually just say music?
Honestly though, like that goes both ways. I remember sitting in wind ensemble and like the kid next to me, he's like, oh, I gotta leave rehearsal early today, and I was like, oh, why? And he's like, oh, I got my computer science like test, like my computer science exam, and I was like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm a computer science double major. And I was like, what? Like, how can you manage all that? It's wild.
I had a friend who was in the trombone studio who was a chem major, a double major of, I'm not sure if it was music performance or music education. And I think either chem or bio. It was like one STEM and one music thing. And I was like, and like, they were a good player too. And it's like, wow, like that's intense. Like, yeah. Mad respect to you.
It's a lot.
Yeah, it just makes
your professors will not understand your other conflict. Like,
it just makes you feel awful about yourself, right? It's just
like band practice. I can't go to lab today. Sorry.
like, oh, I can't make it to the lab. I have a conflict. You have a concert? Like, oh, big deal. It's just a concert. No, like that's my degree. I thought your degree was like this bachelor's of science. Like, what are you doing? Like,
Yeah.
it's like,
That's
but
pretty crazy.
It's
That's definitely a lot.
Yeah, but that was one thing I liked about changing my major path around, because I got to like, experience all those different things. But I think that's also one of the great things about band, because you meet so many people from different majors and like
Definitely.
Yeah.
There is a lot. So
yeah, for sure. Like my sophomore year, I was living with 2 engineering majors. Like,
exactly.
Engineering majors are weird, but cool.
no weirder than the music kids, right?
everyone's weird in their own interesting and intricate ways.
Exactly.
Yeah. So Brian, with MSOM, can you kind of, I guess, go over, because we've talked about different schools so far and what they've done, but with early week at Maryland, can you kind of describe how that is and what that, or how that experience has been like for you when you were in MSOM?
Yeah. So it's really just this 1 week of like really intense band orientation of like, all right, we're going to make sure that you know everything you need to know going in for the rest of the season, taking you wherever you are from square one, catching you up, getting you up to speed. A lot of it, there's a lot of sectional time that was included. For us, that's when, during that early week time, is when we do our audition process. It's really just to place people in seatings and assign parts and that kind of thing. A lot of sectional time, which is great, so you can get to know the people in your section, making sure you're doing icebreakers and all that stuff. And then these larger ensemble blocks outside, going through the marching technique, learning all that. Yeah. And then also learning about the traditions and learning the pregame show. If there's a football game the first week of school, learning a halftime show as well, which can be kind of crazy, where, especially for, those new members where they're, okay, I got to learn the marching technique. I got to learn all these traditions. I got to learn the pregame show. I got to learn a halftime show, and I got to learn all these people's names, and I got to like make sure I know where my classes are. Like it can be a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot.
And it's just that 1 week, and, you hit the, you just start going right away from that Monday.
And let it be. Oh wait, sorry, Jason. Please continue.
Do you guys have any I guess for both Maryland and Rutgers, do you guys have any sort of, I guess, like time where you sit down and literally like go through like all the traditions of how like the Maryland or the Rutgers band got to where they are now? Like some night where like everyone, like all the prospective members and like the returning members can learn about that?
So there's nothing official from the Rutgers band. No official, like, this is history night. I kind of wish there was something like that, but there wasn't. I know a lot of sections have their own, like, they'll have their own history nights.
That's cool, yeah.
And a lot of sections
I wish we had that.
really kind of take pride in their section history. But in terms of, like, official, like, this is, like, the Rutgers band history, you kind of have to dig for it if you want to know anything. But all the information is there. But nothing is like readily available. And it kind of sucks for like the smaller sections. Like the piccolos, they're a particularly small section at Rutgers. The mellophones are generally pretty small. And with that, every few years you get a year where there's only like 3 returning members and maybe six freshmen and sophomores that are like coming in, like transferring into the university and whatnot. But so when you get those waves of new people, kind of all the history from the section gets lost and kind of forgotten, and there's new section identities and whatnot. So that, in terms of history, like we're kind of not very big on it, but I know some sections are very big on their history. I know, for example, the low brass at Rutgers, very big on their section history. But
Well, I know that I mean, especially in the saxophone section, I know me and Brian can both attest to that we try to keep the history alive, and there's some things that I know that we won't go into, just for people that are listening to it that are in high school, that they'll have to experience once they get to Maryland.
Yeah, that experience that you were describing, Craig, of what history is like at the Rutgers Band, it does remind me a lot of what my experiences was like at Maryland too, where sometimes it does feel kind of fragmented, where it's like, you know, almost cliquey, where it's like, all right, my section's doing this thing and this is our section's history, and you know, all that kind of stuff. And some sections are bigger on it than others. The closest thing we have at Maryland to a history night type thing, which I agree, I really wish we did. Cadets had a formal history night with a presentation and everything, and it was like one of everybody's favorite nights, you know, Cadets history night. And yeah, I wish Maryland had something like that. One thing we did have, I'm pretty sure they still do it. We would have the Cannoneers come.
Oh yeah. That's basically it.
Yeah,
I mean, it seems like.
Yeah, one of the things that happens at Maryland is we fire a cannon when the band runs onto the field. And I believe also when we win, I think
when we score a touchdown, like 5 minutes to pregame or something like that, in the middle of pregame, during the national anthem, as we run on the field, like they just like keep firing it off, like an unspecified.
They just love shooting that cannon.
We got the same thing at Rutgers. We love our cannon.
Yeah, one of those Cannoneers, he was I'm pretty sure he's still working as a Cannoneer. He was a MSOM alum, so he would come and talk about his experience in the band and the history of the cannon firing and all that. And I remember my my rookie year, like my first year in Maryland's band, so first football game, we're getting on the field in uniform. I'm like awestruck, you know, on the turf, standing on the turf, like looking around, you know, wearing this new uniform. So many people around, you know, crowds cheering. We're about to run on the field for pregame. I'm like stressed out. Like, am I going to remember everything I'm supposed to go? And then like the front of the band starts running on the field, and they hadn't told us about like when the cannons were gonna fire, and these cannons went off, and I ducked and like almost hit the floor because I was like, what's happening? There's just explosions happening on the field. And then I like realized what was happening and like stood back up like nothing happened.
It definitely takes you by surprise when it happens, because like, you know, it's coming, but then like it still happens and you're like, oh crap, like it's
yeah. Oh, that day too, they also set, you know, those like they'll set up like those pyrotechnics like next to the goal post.
Mm-hmm.
Like they also had those things going on. So, you know, it didn't help.
I will say though, since you guys don't have like a formal history night, I know Brian, you've experienced one with the cadets, but I would definitely get your bands, and for anybody listening who's never had one, I would definitely get your bands to push for that, because we actually have a formal night. I think it's we start band camp on Saturday or Sunday, and then we have the night on like Tuesday or Wednesday, where we have it's like almost pretty much the same thing because it's a whole script, but like we have slideshows. We have like a slideshow of pictures, and one of our directors talks about basically the entire history of the Purdue band from the beginning to like all of our big firsts, like obviously the big bass drum, our first time at the 500, like our twirlers, and it's just like. When I was a freshman, it was just like a really special night, and it still is. But I mean, I've been through it a few times now, but it's like just a really special night getting to learn about like the entire history of your organization that you're actually can be a part of. And I think Brian can attest to it. It's something that's like really special, that's very memorable for most of the freshmen that join band. So if you have the opportunity, I would really try to push for something like that in your organizations.
Yeah, I agree so much. One thing that I got my hands on we have this history book of the marching band. It's during our centennial year celebration in I think it was 2008. They printed copies of this centennial history book with this like really detailed history of the band with photos and memoirs and all this stuff. And I got my hands on a copy of that book, and I thought it was so neat just reading through all that history and learning about all that. And then you see manifestations of that, like in the truck and stuff, and like, oh, that's where that started. Oh, that's where this tradition came from. Like one of our traditions is when we win, we turn our Shagos around backwards. And then we march out of the stadium with our shakos backwards. And there's that little blurb in the history book about, the first time that we did that. And so I really wish we had something like your band has, Jason, where we would have that history night and people could learn about that. I think that would be a really positive thing.
We don't turn around our shakos much anymore. So
No.
Did you guys?
Maryland's not good at football.
This might be a bad question, but when did Maryland join the Big Ten?
2014.
Yeah.
Did you do that before you joined the Big Ten?
The hats backwards?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's been a thing forever, right?
Yeah.
I'm just wondering because, I know it's a big thing in the I think all of the Big Ten bands do it.
Oh.
And we do it after a Big Ten win.
Oh, we just do it after a win.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
that's because when we started doing it, we were still in the ACC. So
Shout out ACC for not loving us.
I wouldn't know what we do when we win.
Sorry,
no.
Craig.
Haven't
I'm
had
sorry.
a win in so long. Oh, no.
I'm sorry, Craig.
It's been
Yeah,
4
you
years since I saw a win. In my 5 years at Rutgers, not once did we have a winning season or even break 500.
Oh.
It's
Ooh.
it's
I mean,
a
that was
sad
like
time.
the saving grace of Maryland was at least we're not Rutgers.
Yeah. I remember looking at
That
the
is a
numbers.
running joke.
I remember looking at the numbers, and I think it was Urban Meyer had more wins in, I think one of his worst seasons as head coach at Ohio State than Chris Ash did in his entire tenure as head coach at Rutgers. And it's
That's not good.
Oof.
I think this may have been at the end of not this past football season, but last year's season. So it was. So he still had 4 extra games, but I don't think he got a. No, I think he may have gotten 1 win in there.
Well, I do know in terms of
Productive season.
I do know in terms of traditions. I know we so we get a handbook or a guidebook at the beginning of early week, and it has some things in there, and there's some things that we have to memorize. So we have to memorize the fight song "Victory," which is basically the song that everyone knows. No one knows our fight song. And then the alma mater, and then so we everyone has to, if you're a new member, you have to memorize that basically by the end of the week. And then you've played it so much after your first year that it's, you don't really it's already ingrained so much in your head that you really don't need to remember it. So I guess for me, it was kind of easy, but also I know, I guess for traditions in my mind, cause I'm so in love with sports that I just know everything more or less. So I had no problems trying to memorize stuff. I don't really know much about the band, to be honest, but in terms of traditions with school, we're good.
Actually, one more fun fact before we move on, but we have a band cheer, which is basically just a big string of words that when you look at it, you really don't know what they mean. But basically, we use that as kind of the guidebook for all the history that we've been through in the band. So I'll find a picture of it and show you guys, but it'll be just a random word. For example, Snoopy is the one that I can just think of off the top of my head. But Snoopy, I believe, is the first time that the Purdue band headed or was part of the Macy's parade in New York. And they marched in front of a giant Snoopy balloon. So that was the word that they chose to add to the band cheer at that time.
Oh,
There's
that's
other
cool.
words in there that and it's just basically you could literally say, every time we say the words a lot during our game day, but basically you can go through the words and remember the history of the marching band based on the
Ooh,
band cheer.
I like that.
That's
cool.
awesome. I love those kind of living history, living documentation type things that exist for programs. It reminds me a lot of our what we call the truck at Maryland, which is our chants and cheers when we march towards the stadium. And those, every section has a different one because after the truck started, every section would just start changing it and adding it for some, or putting this in or taking this out. And we ended up with this hodgepodge mosaic of all these chants that are happening all at the same time. And I remember once I got drum major and I had to learn a different truck, right? Because the drum majors have their own version of chants that we do on the way to the stadium and dance moves and everything. That's when I started. And then living with some people in the trumpet section and learning their truck. it was kind of cool to see like, oh, that part's the same. Oh, this part's the same, or those are the same. So you could kind of piece together like what the original truck may have sounded like. But it's cool like having that living history where things are changing and there's these different
Here, hopefully this thing will focus. This is our full band cheer. And they have the freshmen take a picture of it. I don't know if you guys can see it well, but they have the freshmen take a picture of it and they want them to all memorize it.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
That's
every word has like a significant meaning, and you learn about it on the tradition night, which is I think is totally
Cool.
awesome.
That's so
I'd
awesome.
love it. That sounds like it's awesome.
I'm glad that you brought up the truck, Brian, because I was just about to ask it. So thank you for bringing it up, because that's obviously a big part of what MSOM does on a game day. I guess for practice, can you kind of talk about what the band does, just like over the course of a week, how our practice schedule is usually like, and then how that kind of differs from a game day?
Yeah. So for practice schedule, oh my gosh, I got to think back now. It's been like almost a year.
I'm putting you on the spot. I'm sorry.
Yeah. No, it's all good. So practice schedule was Monday, Wednesday, Friday outdoor rehearsals, and then Tuesday indoor rehearsals. I know by my senior year and moving into the next year, there was a lot of flexibility in that, just to, with changing schedules and taking advantage of resources that were available to the band. So for those Monday, Wednesday, Friday rehearsals outside, you'd show up. We'd start off with stretching, and then we'd move into working on pregame, like maybe doing a few things, fixing things in pregame, then moving on to drill for the show. Those Tuesday nights were the heavy focus on music. So we'd be in the band room indoors on Tuesday nights, working on the music. Then on game days, when we wake up early in the morning on game days, it would be like our last chance to piece together those pieces of the show that maybe we hadn't got to yet, make sure things are finalized, ready to go, do a full run through of a pregame show, make sure that's ready to go as well. Game days always felt much more hectic and frantic all of a sudden. It has to be done now. So
I wanted to ask you, because obviously you're one that knows more about MSOM history than I do. But so for those that don't know, our practice field, it depends on the day. Like for game day, we're usually in the football practice field right next to the football stadium. But normally for outdoor rehearsal, we are at Chapel Field, which is essentially like a makeshift football field that's in front of the Memorial Chapel in front of Route 1, which is basically kind of like one of the borders of campus. But can you kind of describe like the significance and importance of Chapel Field?
Yeah. So the first picture of, I'm pretty sure it's the first picture of the Maryland band when we were founded as an ROTC club at the university, at the Maryland Agricultural College in 1908, is on Chapel Field. And we've been rehearsing there ever since. So it's kind of significant. Any photo of a rehearsal that you see of Maryland's marching band is more likely than not on Chapel Field throughout our 120 some odd year history. So there's a lot of significance there. Also, the chapel plays our alma mater, so that's something that we'd hear during every single rehearsal on the chapel chimes. And yeah, so just at least like for me personally, even like all my favorite memories of like the people in band and the experiences of having band like have occurred on that field, on Chapel Field. So it's definitely a special place for me and a special place for the band. I mean, that being said, when we had the opportunity to use the turf, we would take it.
Yeah.
So,
oh my God, that field's so uneven. Like,
you end up getting the ruts in the grass from doing your basic block.
So bad.
Especially after early week, it becomes the Dust Bowl. The grass dies like that. So
you can basically, like, middle of the season, you can basically see like where the yard lines are just based on like where we've marched during practice. It's really apparent. It's like really obnoxiously just like obvious that like, oh, this is where that is.
Yeah.
That reminds me of my high school's practice field where we'd practice when the football team was on the turf field. always getting all those weird divots, and then just the lines of just all right. There are the rows. It's like either this is like a farm or this is a band practice field.
It's really obnoxious, but it is there. So with a game day, and then we can kind of talk about what you've done in MSOM in terms of being a drum major and also being the section leader of the alto saxophones. Can you kind of describe what a normal game day is for Maryland? And obviously it's kind of differed with you being a drum major and you being in the saxophone section. So between those two, can you just kind of, I guess, from your perspective, describe how a normal game day is at Maryland?
Yeah. So normal game day, waking up real early.
Noon kickoffs, baby. Love them.
Oh yeah, those noon kickoffs. Yeah, when we, no primetime games for Maryland. So
Nope.
Have those early kickoffs, getting up, before the sun comes up, getting all your stuff to the band room. So we would, cart all our stuff over to the band room, dump it there, leave our uniforms and stuff. And then taking your instrument down to the game day rehearsal field, which is one of the practice turf fields that the football team would use next to the stadium. We'd set up as we would for a normal rehearsal for stretch there, do some fun game day traditions that are associated with that. At this point of the day, when everyone's kind of, congregating, rehearsal is starting, everyone's, trying to be there on time. As a section leader, I remember the perspective that was always like the worst part of the day, super frantic, because if anyone was missing, it was all of a sudden like this mad dash to like, where is this person? Like, we have to find them now. Like, because as part of like some of our policies at the time, I'm sure they've been tweaked over the years, but if you weren't there at that game day rehearsal, then you were not marching the show that day. So, because changes would be made that day, things would get finalized that day. So if you didn't show up for that rehearsal, you would not be marching the show. So in an effort to make sure we're all marching the show with no holes, it's like, where is this person? So I have these very vivid memories of like frantically calling people while stretch block is going on, running to people's dorms to like see if they're there, and like, they're sleeping and you're banging on their door trying to get them up. And then, so yeah, going through kind of a normal rehearsal process, a few fun game day traditions, chants and cheers that we do while rehearsal's going on. Then we would run through. I can't remember what we would do first either.
I think it's pregame first. We usually do pregame. Yeah.
All right. Yeah. So we'd run through our pregame show, make sure that's good to go. Just get like a run of that. And then we move on to working and finalizing everything on our halftime show. In some really stressful weeks and some really short weeks where we would just have that like 1 week to learn a show. There were some days where we'd be putting those last 2 sets of drill on the field, the game day, which, it's its own adventure. But so finalizing the show, making sure that's good to go. And then after that, we would head back over to the music building. We would get a little bit of a break. We would have our tailgates. So every section would have their own tailgate with food. Their parents would come a lot of times, and families would be there feeding the band. We would have a small group of the band go to, I think it was half the band, would go over to basically welcome the team into the stadium. We call it Terp Alley. And we would play our favorite pep tunes, dance around, cheer as the football team comes in into the stadium for them to get ready for their game day. Then after that, we line up, we play our pregame fanfare, and then we march and cheer through the parking lot, riling up all the fans who are tailgating on our way to the stadium. We get to the stadium. We line up. This is like kind of like the big waiting period, like the hurry up and wait. That's all bands are notorious for, right? So we're standing there in the heat waiting. We have some section traditions that happen during this time, which I imagine began because of all this hurry up and wait. Like, what else are we gonna do?
Exactly.
We're waiting for pregame to start. We line up, get our shakos on, and then we come out on the field, do our pregame show, and then right into the stands from there. Then, it's the football game.
For better or worse.
It's a game.
Yeah,
It's a game.
Football game happens. Do our halftime show. During third quarter, we'll have a travel band, so a little group which will go around the stadium and play some pep tunes for some parts of the stands, like up in the nosebleeds and over on the other side of the stadium for some fans. And and then one thing that we added to our game day traditions, so after the game is over, playing the fight song, playing Victory in the alma mater, and we added on doing fifth quarter, Big Ten tradition. So, and then after that, trucking back to the School of Music where we're dismissed. A lot of times also we would play our halftime show. We would have a video recording. We'd play it in the band room for people to watch while they're packing up their stuff or while they're mingling and getting ready to go home. Also, one of my favorite parts of the day, it's like that time to just kind of like chillax. Everything's over, drenched in sweat, and finally got your uniform off and just get to like watch the show. And the shape looks good, everyone's cheering, and so yeah. And then after that, we're done. We're dismissed, and we leave.
So I kind of wanted to touch upon a few things with pregame as stuff that you and I have both experienced. So, can we talk about double timing? Because like that sucks. Like I'm sorry to all those that love double timing. It's fun and it looks great, but like it's just running, like stylized essentially. Like, am I wrong in saying that?
I mean, yeah, essentially.
Are you guys talking about your run on? Are you guys talking about like your run on during pregame?
Yeah, it's a lot.
Take a look at it.
So the double time march is the thing that we do when we run onto the field for our pregame show. And then it's also a move that we execute during our pregame show when we do our move called block and mess.
And you can talk about that too, because that is some people have seen it, but it's some crazy stuff.
It's fun. it's a good time. So yeah, our double time march is the way we execute it. Is staying on the balls of your feet, staying lifted, staying up, and moving our feet in double time. But a controlled, stylized run, I guess, would be the best way to describe that. So that's when we come onto the field.
Yeah.
And then during block and mess, that's also what we do. And block and mess is the move during our pregame, iconic move. A lot of history there with that one, where we set up a block, and then the block snakes through on both sides, and line leaders will pull the lines out to actually spell out UM in cursive on the field. And that's right before our alma mater, which is great because right when you're all out of breath, then you got to stand there and play, our alma mater, the prettiest and most majestic that you can while you're, heaving and trying to get your breath back. But yeah.
It's definitely a lot, but I know for a lot of people, it's definitely one of the more one of the more parts for that actually are caring during. I think I cut out, but
yeah, you did.
Did I? Okay,
yeah.
It's an impactful part of pregame.
Yeah, from up in the box, it really looks like something when everyone's moving at just the right time and hitting all their checkpoints. It's really something to see.
Yeah, I remember when I was watching I was going through and kind of watching it after we'd briefly mentioned the block and mess in the first episode of the podcast, and so I went back and I was just watching the Maryland pregame show, and I was like, this is actually really like that maneuver is really cool, and just the pregame show in general is it's really good. I really liked it.
Thank you.
I thought it was a top tier pregame show. So.
A lot of revisions that have happened, even from
revisions.
even from when I was there, a lot of things changing, a lot of things improving as well. I remember I found some video of the band doing the pregame show from like the 70s, and it was kind of cool to see like there were like little snippets of like, oh, we still do that drill move, or oh, we still do that the same way. So
yeah. So with you, as you've gone through obviously section leader and then 2 years as a drum major, did you immediately want to try to get some sort of a position of leadership? And, did the idea of becoming a drum major at some point at Maryland really interest you and intrigue you enough to actually audition for it and get it?
Yeah, I think, well, when I was in high school, I was a drum major of my band in high school, so I did have experience in some leadership. When I got to college, it wasn't on the forefront of my mind at first. It wasn't like an immediate goal of mine. I think after my first season and getting to be friends with one of the drum majors, Ellie, and talking to her a little about it, I think after that, near the end of that first season, I was thinking, oh, this is something I think I want to do, like by my senior year or something like that. So I auditioned my freshman year, mostly to just get my name out there, figure out what that process was, just so I could be better prepared down the road.
And having done it for 2 years, what was the most, I guess for you, what was the most enjoyable part of being the drum major at Maryland, especially your second year, kind of being that returning face that a lot of people recognize that were in band?
Trying to think. I think in just reflecting back on both of those seasons, I think what I really enjoyed about being drum major that second season was things not being a surprise. Kind of knowing what to expect, going to my first game day, being like, all right, I know how this works. I know how to call these pep tunes. Like it's going to be fine. Like, and not being super freaked out about it. I just remember being stressed too much of the time my junior year. And then my senior year is when I really felt like, all right, like this is going to be okay. And things are going to go smoothly. And yeah.
Now I want to talk about the best part of being at Maryland, the pep band for basketball, because I know that Brian, obviously you did it a few years. You got to travel with the Terps to the tournament. Can you kind of talk about how that is and just, what it's like to be at a Maryland basketball game, since that's really the sport that we try to push more than football, it seems?
Yeah, it's fun. Definitely a lot more energy at those basketball games for sure. People get way more excited about it. The stands, stay packed for the duration of the game. But yeah, it's just totally different. A lot more fun. I wouldn't say a lot more fun, but a lot of fun.
Fun
a lot of different ways. Yeah.
So I was going to say, for you, were you someone who knew a lot about sports coming into college, and this kind of enhanced that? Or was it like you weren't really kind of a sports person, and, being in marching band and watching football games, and especially with basketball and those games and how intense they are, did that kind of heighten for you that, that idea of this is how big sports are to people?
Yeah, definitely coming into college, not really that into sports. I think being a part of the band got me into sports a lot more. I grew up watching college basketball. Specifically, my dad went to Villanova, and those are the games that were on, all through March Madness. So I definitely had more of a cursory understanding of basketball and college hoops, and I think it definitely, being a part of the band, enhanced that for sure. Just before being in the band, I didn't really know any of the players' names, but when you're there at every game, you get really invested, and that, I think that's what makes it fun. If you're at those games and you just have no idea what's going on, then it's kind of it's fun. But I think that for me, really getting into those games made it more fun to be in the pep band.
Yeah, and liking players like I did. Oh God, I cut out again. Yeah, liking players like I did, which is, wearing a stupid towel around your... Did it happen again?
It's every time you say it cut out, or at least that time, you didn't cut out, and then you said you cut out, and then you ended up cutting out.
Yeah.
I'm in my basement, and, the Wi-Fi here is kind of garbo, so I'm trying. But basically, with me, for those who don't know, I was wearing a towel last week. The reason why I wear the towel is because there is a player on Maryland basketball who scored 5 career points, yet he was like my favorite player, and he wore a towel every game. So I decided to do the exact same thing. Do I regret it? No. That's all I'm going to say about that. But so, Brian, traveling to the NCAA tournament, since I've done it and you've done it, can you kind of describe that experience? Because you went, so for those that don't know, Maryland basketball 2015-16 was number 2 in the nation coming into the year. They ended up going to the Sweet 16. So you went out to, I forget what the Sweet 16 site was, but you went out to Spokane, Washington for the first and second round. So can you kind of talk about how that was and how much fun that was and what kind of things that you did there?
Yeah. So I didn't really have any interest in joining the pep band until I joined the marching band. And that was mainly because at the time, it's different now, but at the time when I was joining my freshman year, you could only be in the pep band if you were in the marching band. So that's how I kind of like found out about it and joined it, and because everyone I knew was doing it. And then those trips ended up being something really, really competitive, getting those spots to get to travel. And I was really lucky to get selected to be one of those spots to travel with the men's basketball team to those tournaments. So I think it was just, the whole experience was really cool. And being such a small group, only 27 members of the band, traveling with the team, and, you're getting on that charter plane with the team. I think one of the weirdest things was, like you get on the Maryland bus with all your stuff, you're like all dressed up in your business casual, and, they rolled the bus through the back entrance of the airport. We rolled up the BWI, like they pulled us in the back gates, and you walk out onto the tarmac, and there's like this little makeshift security. And it was just like this experience that I've just like never had before, flying on this charter plane and getting that, like a little taste of what it's like to be one of these like Division I, athletes. And, so we went to Spokane, which was a beautiful city. Oh my gosh, the waterfalls, and it was really something. Definitely, there's a little bit of free time where we got to like wander around or like go get some food or something like that. But for the most part, it's pretty structured, pretty scheduled. There's always some event that they want some extra music for, either the team's going somewhere, so you play something, or the team's coming from somewhere and you're going to go play something. So they definitely kept us busy in that regard. But yeah, it was just a lot of fun to like get a break from school in the middle of the semester, be on the road, a little bit of a, vacation, getting to be there with the team and cheer them on. And one of the fun things about being in that little band too was, you kind of had to assume this character of super fan when you were on that little team of, the little band team. Everyone's decked out with the face paint and the arm sleeves and the headbands, and, you're just like screaming at the top of your lungs. Cause in some of those cases, when we were out in Spokane, there were some Maryland fans there, but, not a lot. But definitely, I think, who'd we play? UCLA in one of those rounds. And
trying to think, it was South Dakota State and Hawaii.
Yeah, Hawaii, yeah. But yeah, just like being where we were in the country, it wasn't a ton of Maryland fans, so you almost feel like you got to make up for it, cheer on the team a little bit harder. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, so you guys, and that was kind of like me my freshman year, was that everything was scheduled. Like last year, or I guess my junior year, like they were just like the only time you have to play is like the game. So like we literally just got like full days off of doing literally nothing.
Wow.
So like we went down to so we were in Jacksonville. We went down to Jacksonville Beach the one day, just chilled out the entire day. It was like the first day of spring, so like there was arenas down there, and we got like free water ice with everyone.
All right.
But like it was like I guess for freshman year it was like that when we went to Orlando. But like junior year, they were just like, yo, like all you guys need to do is just go to the games. Like that's it. You guys can just chill, do whatever the heck you want for the rest of the time. And it was great.
That's fun.
It was so much fun. So I guess, off that, obviously there's a lot of things to be done at Maryland. There's a lot of things to do. In terms of athletics, other than basketball and football, is there a sport that you really enjoyed going to games for that like you would recommend to people that are either there or incoming high school seniors that are going to go to Maryland?
I think volleyball was a lot of fun. Those volleyball games, where high energy, a little gym where all the fans sound loud and the band sounds loud too. So
Yeah, definitely.
I really like the energy at those volleyball games. It was a lot of fun.
I was gonna say that I know you went to a few soccer games, right?
Yeah, I did.
I kind of already talked about it, but for those that don't know, Maryland men's soccer is mental. The student section is stupid. Like, it's crazy. It's so much fun. And I'm sure that you experienced that, and I'm sure that you were you in the student section, or did you sit like on like the sidelines?
For the soccer games,
Yeah.
I was in the band for a soccer game once.
Okay. Yeah, dude, you should have went to men's games. They're lit. They're so much fun.
Oh, I would
Like,
hear
come
them.
on.
The soccer stadium was right next to the music school, and I would be like in a practice room or something, doing something. And you just hear like the roars coming from the soccer stadium next door.
It's a lot.
That's just such a wild concept for me, because I think throughout my 5 years at Rutgers, I think I've been to 2 men's soccer games, and to say the student section would be a lie, because it just
The student section at Maryland is literally something else. Like
at a soccer game at Rutgers, like even the premier soccer team, the women's team, like, all right, there's some people in the stands, but like a men's soccer game, it's basically just like the parents of the local players and like high school recruits.
We've gotten like 7,000, 8,000 people to games.
Wow.
Like I've been there for those games.
Ridiculous.
It's crazy. Like the one game we played UCLA, and the one thing we like to do is, because the student section is behind both goals, we'll yell whatever the team name is, and then we'll yell "sucks" back on the other side. So because UCLA is like an acronym, we basically around the stadium they said UCLA, and then the next day would say "sucks," and then they just kept going, and it was so cool. It was so much fun. It's like, it was stupid, but it was a lot of fun. I guess other things at Maryland, for just like aside from band, what things did you do just in general as a student? Like how student life at Maryland, how would you kind of describe how it was? What were some places that you went to? Because obviously I know that there's a lot to do around campus, but what did you do?
Oh gosh, I spent a lot of time in the music building. That's like my nights and days just living there. What else? I definitely took advantage of a lot of the stuff that the Stamp would offer, like the free movies and stuff that they do. We actually had a movie theater in the student union that would play free movies, and I went and saw Star Wars there, which was super cool, and taking advantage of that. And they had the all-nighter event also, which was fun. I only went to that once though. Other things with campus life, spending a lot of time down on Route 1, all the different eateries there, getting addicted to bagels at Bagel Place, which I every now and then I still go and get a bagel there when I'm nearby. Really, and going to get pizza or something there, hanging out with people down on Route 1.
What are some places that you would recommend on Route 1 for those that don't know? I mean, like if you were like going there on like a weekend, like I know, like I don't know if you went to any of the bars down there or anything like that, but like where would you recommend going?
One of my favorite spots was Looney's Pub.
Looney's so good.
I would get this, was it the barbecue pork quesadilla? Oh my gosh. I have dreams about that barbecue pork quesadilla. So definitely. And the Crush buckets Looney's that were deceivingly too inexpensive.
Well, did you ever go out to like RG? Oh God, did I cut out? I cut out.
No, you're good.
I cut out.
You're good.
Okay. Did you ever go to like RJ Bentley's or Cornerstone or Terrapin Turf, which are, you know, 3 of the bars that are down there? And did you ever go to like Pizza Kingdom to get pizza, or go to Blaze to get pizza? Or, you know, there's a lot of pizza places in and around that area. But,
Yeah, there's Pizza Kingdom, Blaze, what was that? Latza.
yeah, lots is really good.
So many pizza options for sure. But actually, one of my favorite foods to get when I was down on Route 1 and like before I'd make my way back to my dorm would be Marathon Deli. Get some Greek
Oh,
food.
the Holy Grail.
Yeah, that was definitely one of my favorites. Getting
The marathon fries are to die for.
Yeah, whatever that sauce is, it's like mayonnaise and spices, and I don't even know.
It's really good. Yeah. For those that don't,
not good for you, but it's good.
For those that don't know, Marathon Deli is basically like a Greek restaurant kind of takeout thing that a lot of kids go to on the weekends. It's really packed, and they have this really, really good marathon fries, which is basically just like a plate of fries, and they put some sort of seasoning on it. And the marathon sauce that they put on it that Brian was just talking about is like, no one really knows what's in it, but it's just really, really good. And it makes the fries really, really good. And especially like at 1 a.m, if you're drunk, like it's even better because it's like enhanced and all that kind of stuff. I guess with talking about Maryland in general, what are some of your, like, what were some of the things that really made your experience as a student?
I think, I was going to say marching band, but I feel like that's like a given, you know?
Yeah.
It's a cop out right
marching
there.
band was my experience at Maryland. But no, really though, like when I think about like the friends I made and the things I would do and like the sections in the band were just like, you know, that saxophone section and those friends I made there, you know, it was like having that, you know, family from day one was, you know, something I really enjoyed. And, you know, I think something I needed as a new college student and making friends and having that social support network and people there to look out for me, you know, even when I make awful decisions as a college freshman, you know, I knew like someone I knew from marching band would be there to like make sure I got home safe or to, you know, make sure I was okay. And I think for like that, I'm so grateful for. Yeah, just like those people, those relationships that I built and the people that I met through the band, I think, you know.
And the last thing, for those that are considering doing marching band, either college marching band, either that are in high school or that are in college, what would you I guess like for you, why should people join college marching band? What's like your pitch to people saying like this is why you should join college marching band, and especially the Mighty Sound of Maryland?
Yeah, well, to join college marching band or even the Mighty Sound of Maryland, it's something new. It's something you've never done before. No matter what kind of band you've done, if you've done drum corps, if you've done high school band, if you had a show band, if you had a corps style band, you're part of a high stepping band or an HBCU band or a style band in high school or something like that, whatever that college is that you're going to that has a marching band, it's something that you've never done before. You know, be it that you're going to an HBCU or you're going to a Big Ten school or you're going to, I don't even know what other college, but it's different than anything you've ever done before. So I think like going into that, like just not having any expectations for what it's going to be, because it's going to be something new, it's going to be something exciting, and it's going to be an experience like you've never had before. So it's a ton of fun.
It is a lot of fun. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Brian. We really appreciate it.
It was so nice meeting all of you too.
Nice to meet you too, Brian. It's always a pleasure to make new friends and meet new faces.
For sure.
Fun talking to you.
Yeah. So thank you so much for coming on, Brian. Thank you everyone for listening to this week's episode. Hopefully next week we'll have someone new on talk about more things about the Big Ten. So yeah, thank you so much everyone. Have a great week. Stay safe, stay healthy.